وباعث الأنبياء والمرسلين الذي بعد فلا يرى وقرب فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على خاتم النبيين وسيد المرسلين والشفيع المذنبين الرسول المؤيد والنبي الممجد المصطفى الأمجد أبي القاسم محمد
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد
وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما على الإمام المنتظر وحجة الله الثاني عشر ابن العسكري المنتظر ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فإن الله الصادق العليم قال في كتابه الكريم القرآن الحكيم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. بقية الله خير لكم إن كنتم مؤمنين. صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Into the fifth night and continuation of our discussion, we slowly start moving into that phase of our talk in which we now seek to understand and comprehend the signs that indicate the herald and the arrival of the 12th Imam. An Imam who is not only a guide for us, not only a person who prays for us, not only a person who's aware of exactly everything that we do, but somebody that the tradition says that he is, if you go by the tradition, by the Holy Prophet says, Ana wa Aliyun abawa hadhihi al-ummah, that Ali and myself, I and Ali are the fathers of this ummah. And at times I am reminded of that tradition of the 8th Imam, wherein he had spoken about the traits and the characteristics of an Imam. And some of the points that come to mind, and when it is related and compared to certain actions that has been witnessed during the Ghaibat-e-Sughra and the Ghaibat-e-Kubra of the 12th Imam, with respect to certain individuals, it gives us an understanding that despite our Imam not being in front of us, in the sense that we are not able to see him, we are not able to perceive him by our physical senses, but the important fact is that although we may not be able to see him, we may not be able to perceive him by means of our senses, but the letter, for example, written by the 12th Imam, the Tawqi' written by the 12th Imam to Sheikh Mufid, indicates that everything that takes place with every single individual, whether they are in this hall or whether they are outside the hall, everything passes before the eyes of the 12th Imam. And at an appropriate occasion, I will bring this forth to you, that despite him not being in front of us, as we continuously perceive each other to be before us, it does not mean that the Imam is ghafil of us, And it does not mean that the Imam is negligent of us. And it does not mean that the Imam is nonchalant about events, instances and circumstances that overcome us. But that will come at an appropriate time in the course of these lectures. Last night when we discussed about the signs that will indicate the arrival of the 12th Imam, at that point you remember the footnotes that we had mentioned, that while we will start from tonight discussing the signs that we need to know about the arrival of the 12th Imam, keep in mind those footnotes that we had discussed near the end of the lecture, because those play an important part in controlling ourselves in just running amok with our deductions and our conclusions. If you remember, when we were discussing about the signs that indicate the arrival of the 12th Imam, we had classified them into three categories. One was the group that indicated the general perception, the general circumstances, the general scenario that would be prevailing at the time of the 12th Imam. Today we will start discussing one of them. However, one word of confession and acknowledgement is that while we start discussing these signs, it will not be possible, it will not be probable, it will not be appropriate for me to discuss each and every sign that has been indicated. Because just for example, just the very category that we are talking about, when we said that the first category consisted of those signs that would indicate all that would happen, that would be prevailing when the Imam comes. However, these signs do not indicate at all, do not bear any indication on the time frame when the Imam would come. All that these signs indicate that when the Imam comes, these circumstances would prevail. It could have happened decades before the arrival of the Imam, centuries before the arrival of the Imam. It does not indicate on any time factor when the Imam would come. Just the fact that when you see these things, you must know that now we've passed that phase whereby now the arrival of the Imam becomes closer. How close we cannot say. But while we discuss these traditions that indicate on the general circumstances that would be prevailing when the 12th Imam comes, these are so numerous that if I were to start counting them out, each one of just one category would require one ashara. Because just this one category, which talks about the general scenario, consists of more than 30 signs. And if 3 signs were to be discussed in one lecture of 15 minutes per sign, it would require one ashara. So you understand where we are. With the limitations in our hand, what we endeavor to do is pick out those important things that need to be conveyed, pick them out, talk about it, so a general perception is achieved in terms of the time frame that we have got and in terms of the topic that we need to discuss. But before we go on to that, before we go on to talk about the individual points, individual events, individual circumstances that would be prevailing as per this category of the signs, there is one thing that needs to be understood as an overall figure of what would take place, what would be prevailing when the 12th Imam comes. And who has explained this to us? None other than your and our 4th Imam, Zainul Abidin Ajjalal alayhi salatu wassalam. After the incident of Karbala, Imam is in Medina. While Imam is in Medina, numerous questions keep coming up. And you need to keep this in mind. We have discussed this before, that every Masoom from the time of the Holy Prophet has spoken about the 12th Imam. Similarly, the 4th Imam, sitting with his companions at that point of time, and I will remind you of one more sentence which I had mentioned in my 2nd Majlis and the 3rd Majlis. The Imam is sitting with his companions. Now the life history of the 4th Imam is an extremely intricate life history. I just don't want to start it off in detail. Even one point I start discussing, I will just go off the track. But the life history of the 4th Imam is extremely important, because during the life history of the 4th Imam, during the lifespan of the 4th Imam, which was a very protracted period, at that point when the 4th Imam was the Imam, the period was characterized by one factor, and that one factor was that after the incident of Karbala, there was a general awakening with respect to the madlumiyat and the oppression that was meted out upon the Ahlul Bayt. Before Imam Sajjad, there were issues. People knew that the Ahlul Bayt were subjected to oppression. But after the incident of Karbala, there was a dramatic upheaval, an overwhelming effusion of emotions in understanding the persecution that were meted out to the Ahlul Bayt. As a result of which, in the lifespan of the fourth Imam, there were numerous events that you could term as rebellions against the Bani Umayyah. It didn't take place immediately after the Karbala, because Karbala was such a shock. The Karbala event initiated such a shock in the minds of the people that for the first few years after Karbala, nobody knew how things would turn out. Not even Yazid knew, not even after, because Yazid died 3 years after Karbala. 3 years after Karbala, Yazid died. Even in those 3 years, Yazid did not know how things would unfurl because of the severity of this event of Karbala. But after this event of Karbala took place, for the first few years, there was an upheaval within the entire society. People would not know who's going to rebel, what is happening, who's thinking what would be the status that would be taking place in the Islamic government, within the Islamic empire. Slowly things began to stabilize and people realized that things had gone wrong. And so in the latter part of the imamat of the fourth Imam, there were a lot of rebellions against the Bani Umayyah. Now, when these rebellions would take place, people would gather together. And injustice has been perpetrated. Oppression has been perpetrated on the Ahlul Bayt. Hussein has been killed. We need to support the Ahlul Bayt. So on various quarters within the entire dominion of supremacy and power of the Bani Umayyah, at various regions there would be rebellions coming up. As a result of it, in order to bring about the rebellion, people began to collect arms and ammunitions. When they began to collect arms and ammunitions, now when you collect arms and ammunition and you want to lead a rebellion, you need a leader. For these people who were the Alawiyin and who wanted to support the Ahlul Bayt, who wanted to avenge the death of Hussein, who wanted to take revenge upon the Bani Umayyah for what happened in Karbala, you need a leadership. And who other than the maximum or the most superior leader than the fourth Imam at that time? This was one such sessions amongst those various sessions in which people would come to the fourth Imam and say, Yabna Rasulullah, now so many years, 2 decades after Karbala, we now want to avenge, we want to do. There are so many people in various parts of Hijaz, around Mecca, around Medina, in Iraq, in Basra, in Sham, who are willing to support you. Unfortunately, you are not rising up. Others in your name are picking up arms in order to state to the people that they want to support you. They want to avenge the death of your father. They are playing with the emotions of the people. Their agenda is not to give you your haqq back. Their agenda is to take power. So they are using your name to mobilize the people to join them so that they can increase their army, and as a result of which they want to fight against the Bani Umayyah, take the power for their own benefit, but they cannot do it on their own, so they are using your name and Hussein's name for this. So Imam Sajjad says, so what? He's saying, if they can use your father's name and what happened to your father in Karbala, you deserve it to do it better because he's your father. Your family was massacred in Karbala. So why don't you take up arms? Why don't you take up the leadership of this rebellion? At that time, the fourth Imam said, this is not our cause. Ours is not to pick up the sword. The one who will pick up the sword will be the 12th of us. He will pick up the sword and he will start a rebellion. But that rebellion will not be a localized rebellion. It's going to be a universal rebellion. We will not pick up the arms till the 12th comes. While they are talking, so they ask him the question, what will happen at that time? So the Imam says he will come, a universal mission, a global mission of equality and justice. At that time when the Imam is talking, the fourth Imam, the companions are sitting now, they're stunned, they're jolted. At the same time, when the Imam tells them what will happen in the final stages, they become desirous to be part of that group. So they, with asaf, with hopelessness, or with some sadness, they turn to the Imam and say, but Yabna Rasulullah, if this is what is going to happen when the 12th comes, and this is the global mission, and this is the universal reformation that he's going to create, we would want to be part of this. Unfortunately, we will die. This was the occasion when the 4th Imam brought about that rule of the thumb, that formula that you and me recite on Thursday night, where in the ziyarat, said by whom? By the 6th Imam. 6th Imam, the grandson of the 4th Imam. The 6th Imam picked up this formula from the 4th Imam. What is that? When you recite the ziyarat, فَيَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ مَعَكُمْ فَأَفُوزَ مَعَكُمْ. What do we say in the ziyarat waratha? The 6th Imam taught us ziyarat waratha. In ziyarat waratha, we are turning to Hussein and says, فَيَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ مَعَكُمْ. Had I been, oh I wish I had been with you, فَأَفُوزَ مَعَكُمْ. I too would have been successful amongst those who had been successful with you. This taught by the 6th Imam, but first the formula was given by the 4th Imam. When he's talking to the people complain, if this is how it's going to be the rank and the status of those final people at the time of the 12th Imam, we would want to be part of it. Imam says, you will not be deprived of it. If you really feel, if you're really sincere, if you really want to join that revolution, if you are sincerely interested, and ikhlas and sincerity is of prime and paramount importance, if you have that, for then you remember one thing, even if you are into the grave, even if you have died, Allah will raise you from the grave and make you join that universal mission. And this is we have in the traditions. We've got names of individuals who will be made to come out of the grave. I have read it, there's a list. Certain individuals have come repeatedly in the tradition. This man will be raised up. Abu Dharr Ghifari, Mikhdad, Salman, Ammar, Abu Dujana, names are there, they've been told, it's been narrated, you will come up, you will be raised. The 4th Imam told them, فَيَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ مَعَكُمْ فَأَفُوزَ مَعَكُمْ. But at that time, when the people were saying, that would be such an honor to be in that group in which there was a universal revolution under one divine guide, with one divine religion, under the guidance of the divine guide and the divine rules, at that time the Imam Sajjad says, hold on. There's always a slip between the cup and the lip. What you are looking is after the hurdle. After the hurdle is that. But there is a hurdle to cross. There is a barrier to cross. There is a problem to cross. And they said, what is that problem? He's saying to be part of that revolution, you need to be part of a particular zaman, a particular phase. But that phase is so difficult. Then he comes out with this sentence. He says, to be part of that revolution, you need to be part of a zaman, of a particular time. The zaman so difficult to be staying in and so difficult to be living a life in. So they say, how difficult? At that time the 4th Imam says, there will be the Akhirul Zaman, prior to the arrival of the 12th Imam. It is after the 12th Imam comes that Dawlatin Karima that we recite in the month of Ramadan will be established. But before that, a time will come, a situation would be there, a phase would be there, where people and mu'mineen in the world would be facing so much problems that it would be easier for a person to hold fire in his hand for a day, but more difficult for him to keep his iman intact for one day. If somebody passes this phase and maintains his iman, then you have that Dawlatin Karima. These are the things, a general perspective. But now when this is said by the 4th Imam, let's come back to those individual signs. We'll pick up a few of the signs, because what did the 4th Imam say? It is easier to it's a metaphorical statement. Nobody holds fire in the hand. But it's a metaphorical statement to indicate to the people, it is easier to hold fire in the hand in the Akhirul Zaman than for a person to hold fast to his iman for one day. Even today when you leave out from your houses and return in the evenings, whether it is people who are working, whether people who are going to school, how many times in the day do we face situations where we have to make a decision between Shaitan and Rahman? And how many times we have sacrificed the Rahman for Shaitan? Whether it is the youngsters when they go to the schools and universities, and we don't want to pick out those individual points, whether it is Fulan or Fulana. Nor do we want to pick out when people who go to work, whether it is this or that. But count amongst ourselves, in the course of one day, how many times do we flout the rulings of God? But again, we don't want to go into the details. We want to work on the signs of it. But coming to this point now, Where do we get this? The entire scenario, as I said, 30 plus signs. In one to finish it before the other categories need to be discussed. In this long tradition, he's mentioned a lot of things, and we will mention a few of them. One of the most important things, I'm not saying the most important, the other ones will come following shortly. Understand, don't lose focus. We are right now discussing the general signs that will indicate the general situation and circumstances prevailing or present when the Imam comes. The first Imam says, one of the things that will definitely take place in the era leading up to the arrival of the 12th Imam is there will be a flow, an influx, an increase, a huge number of false Imams coming up and claiming to be the Imams. A lot of false Imams will come up. Now when the false Imam comes up, there are two issues. One is the false Imam coming up, one. Second, how to react when this false Imam comes. Two dangers. The Imam says, before the arrival of the 12th Imam, you will see in the lead up to the arrival, a lot of false claimants to the Imamat would come. And this is very understandable. Because the Imamat has been something that has been emphasized right from the time of the Holy Prophet. And all the Bani Umayyah and all the Bani al-Abbas were waiting for the 12th one to come, so that they could control this man who was going to come as the 12th Imam. Why do you think that from the time of the 7th Imam, all the Imams were subjected to such persecution? Why do you think specifically after the 9th Imam and the 10th Imam, the 11th Imam was under total house arrest? He was not even allowed to meet his wife, so as to avoid conception of the 12th Imam. But makaru wa makarallahu wallahu khairul makirin. They may not wish him to be born, but when Allah wants somebody to be born, he is born without the signs of pregnancy. We heard it. We heard it. At that point of time, when we say that lot of false claimants would come, the reason would be that the emphasis given to an Imam and the Imamat and the loftiness of this status was so much that people would want to derive benefit out of it. Specifically realizing the Imam collects a lot of homes and wields immense power. One of the things that you find these false claimants doing this and making false claims is for what? Why do you think Ja'far-e-Kadhab, everybody knows who's Ja'far-e-Kadhab? Ja'far-e-Kadhab was the chacha of the 12th Imam, the brother of the 11th Imam, the son of the 10th Imam. The son of the 10th Imam, the brother of the 11th Imam, and the chacha of the 12th Imam, from the Ahlul Bayt, the blood of a Sadat and an Imam flowing. But when person wants to go astray, he goes astray. Realizing the power that the 10th Imam and the 11th Imam wielded, his faith wavered. And after the death of the 11th Imam, he claimed himself to be the Imam. It had to be those miraculous actions of the 12th Imam for people to realize he is not the Imam. He didn't even, the 12th Imam did not even allow Ja'far-e-Kadhab to recite Salatul Mayyat upon the 11th Imam. Pushed him aside, but that's a different story. The power that this position wielded prompted people to make false claims. And it is not now that it would happen. Examples have taken place even during the time of the 12th Imam, when people knew that he had gone into ghaibat. And when the naibin, the 4 naib, nuwab arba, Imam had 4 naib in ghaibat al-sughra, 4 people who could definitely directly contact the Imam. At the time of the 3rd naib, Husayn ibn Raw al-Nawbakhti, at that point of time there was a scholar by the name of Shalmaghani. This Shalmaghani was a very big scholar. This is at the time of Ghaibat-e-Kubra, let alone now. There people knew Imam is in Ghaibat. This man was a scholar. He was anticipating himself to become one of the Naib. He was a scholar. Written many books. His books are available. Shalmaghani, Abu Ja'far Shalmaghani, Abu Muhammad Shalmaghani, written many books, collected ahadith of the Masumeen. But he was expecting to become the Naib. But Imam knew better. So when the second naib passed away, Sa'id ibn Uthman, at that time he was expecting that he would become the naib. 12th Imam says no, the third naib will be Husayn ibn Rawh. At that point of time things changed for him, and he started messing around with the traditions, and he started putting his own things, and then he started claiming himself to be the Imam, a scholar. But then when you go deviated, shaitan comes into your minds, then you make a difference. He started claiming himself to be the Imam. Then he went further. He said the ruh of the Holy Prophet comes into my body. The ruh of Fatima to Zahra comes into my body. The ruh of Ali comes into my body. All blasphemous claims. Why? So that he could gain power, he could gain popularity, he could gain the following of the people. This is what people go after. What are the two things that people go after? Money and power. This was a consequence of imamat. Somebody who's an imam, if he is not able to control himself, can mess things up. It is our real imams who had no penchant and desire to gain power and gain money. For them money and power was nothing. But you have these false claimants, even at that time in Ghaibat al-Sughra. Tradition says, nearing to the arrival of the 12th Imam, there will be an outflow of false imams. Now, problem when these false imams comes is this, that when these false imams come, there will be numerous ones. Ordinary people are waiting for the 12th Imam. Every time after Salat, Allahumma ajjil li waliyakal faraj. Oh Allah, hasten the reappearance. Somebody stands up and claims, I am the 12th Imam. These laymen, not knowing the personality of this person, look at the problem that it could arise. And why it is so important to gain the ma'rifat of the 12th Imam. This person would understand, would realize person has claimed, I am the 12th Imam. He doesn't know the surroundings, the circumstances that lead up to the arrival of the 12th Imam. What are the characteristics of the 12th Imam? So somebody claims he knows the 12th Imam is going to come. Somebody claims, develops a following. He says that is the 12th Imam, I am going to follow him. He begins to follow. After some time realizes, no, he's not an Imam. He backs out, fingers burned. Second time, after some time, another Imam will come. This is tradition saying, lot of Imams will come, false Imams will come before the arrival of the actual, real, authentic Imam. Second time, he will claim, somebody would claim, this person would follow. Again he would realize, I burnt my fingers, this is the wrong one. Once bitten, twice shy, but this is such an important thing. He says, no, I would want to be making an effort to follow the second one. Again he would realize he's burnt his fingers. 3 times, 4 times. What will happen to this man? What will happen to this man? He's saying, what is this? Every person that comes as an imam comes out to be a false imam. Every person claims to be an imam comes to be a false imam. I have got nothing to do with this imamat. I will sit and do my salat, my psalm, and leave all the affairs afterwards, whatever happens. When the real imam comes, this person turns back. This is the reason these false imams become a problem. The imam says, when so many false imams comes, mu'mineen will just turn away from imamat. And he says, what nonsense is this imamat? Why do you think it has been said that in the ghaibat of the imam, only those individuals whose hearts have been protected by God will not waver away from the real imam? One of the things which will cause the wavering away of people from the real imam is this: not knowing about the 12th Imam, not knowing the circumstances leading up to the 12th Imam, not bothering to know what this 12th Imam would come with and stand for. Every Tom, Dick and Harry that would come, they would take him as an Imam, to such an extent that every time they would burn their fingers, they would say, we don't want this Imam now. Moments you say, I don't want this Imam, and the real Imam comes, and a person backs off, that is eternal perdition. At the time of the 12th Imam, then there is no turning back. With every Imam, you had a subsequent Imam in which you could turn back and seek forgiveness. After the 12th, there is nobody. So if somebody messes up at that time, that is finished, khalas. More 12th Imam. And this is the point that is said, that if somebody messes up in understanding the ma'rifat of the 12th Imam, why do you think the Holy Prophet says, Man mata wa lam ya'rif imam az-zamanihi mata maytat al-jahiliya? If somebody dies without knowing his imam, he's died the death of a kafir. If so many false imam comes and this person turns away from imamat, he's died the death of a kafir. There is no salvation. There is no deliverance. It's a one-way ticket into the fires of hell. Becomes so important, along with our work, along with our profession, along with learning the dollars and pounds. We need to spend time to understand who is this man that is going to come, lest we mistake him for somebody else and mess up our akhirat. 60 years, 70 years of our life, we spend in earning the bills and dollars and pounds. We don't spend time to understand our 12th Imam at our own peril. If an Imam is left alone when he needs help, understand the importance of an Imam. A wali is more than the importance and the significance of Khane Kaaba. On the member I'm saying this. More than that of a Kaaba. You want me to prove it? Ali ibn Babwe Khumi, the father of Sheikh Saduq. The father of Sheikh Saduq, Ali ibn Babwe. He is writing in his book. Now, who is this Sheikh Saduq and who is Ali ibn Babwe? One sentence to make you understand whom I am referring to put my claims forward, that an Imam's position is higher than that of a Kaaba. I don't even want to go to that to make an Imam come into this world, the Kaaba was made to break. The Kaaba was made to split. Why? To emphasize an wali of Khuda is more important than bricks and mortar. But here Ali ibn Babwe writes, Ali ibn Babwe is that person whose son Sheikh Saduq. Sheikh Saduq has several books. In these books, the books that he has written are of such greatness that without the ahadith from that book, no mujtahid can give a fatwa. No mujtahid can give a fatwa. There are 4 books that a mujtahid uses in order to give a fatwa for anything, whether it is wudu, salat, saum, zakat, hajj. 2 of those 4 books belong. One of those 4 books belong to Sheikh Saduq. Without that book, a mujtahid does not give fatwa. This Sheikh Saduq is the son of Ali ibn Babwe, about whom I'm talking. But this Sheikh Saduq was born, you know how? Imam Zamana prayed for the father to get that child. Now you understand the status of Ali ibn Babwe, that the 12th Imam prays to Allah that may Allah grant this Ali ibn Babwe a son who would be beneficial to Islam. This is Ali ibn Babwe. He is writing that if a wali is abandoned by a person, then even if this person goes to the Kaaba to take shelter, Allah will prefer that Kaaba to be destroyed in addition to this man being destroyed rather than save him. Means what? Means I want to take you back to an incident. Incident of Abraha. ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بأصحاب الفيل ألم يجعل كيدهم في تضليل أرسل عليهم طيرا أبابيل يرميهم من حجارة من سجيل. What does he say? Saying Abraha, when he brought his army of elephants to break down the Kaaba, Abdul Muttalib says, I'm not interfering, this is the house of God, he will protect. What does this Surah Fil says? Abraha brought his army of elephants to break down the Kaaba. In order to protect the Kaaba, which is the house of God, Allah sends small birds. Arsala alayhim tayran ababil, small birds. Small birds with an even smaller beak. And a smaller beak with an even smaller space in that beak. And that smaller space in that beak, harboring and carrying even smaller stones. But these stones, when dropped onto the elephants, killed them instantaneously. This is how Allah protected His house from the army of Abraha. Now look at somebody who leaves the wali and seeks protection in the Kaaba. Here Allah, in order to protect His house, vanquished an entire army of elephants. Look at this incident at the time of Hussein. When Hussein moved to Makkah from Medina, at that time Makkah was under the control of a person by the name of Abdullah ibn Zubair. Abdullah ibn Zubair was one person. Abdullah ibn Zubair, Abdullah the son of Zubair. Who was Zubair? Zubair was one of the companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam, together with Talha. Talha and Zubair, two friends, very close friends. They were the companions of the first Imam, very close companions, very close companions. Unfortunately, things turned to such a way that these very close companions, Talha and Zubair of Imam Ali alayhi salam, eventually end up fighting Ali alayhi salam in the battle of Jamal. Ajaba. Two close companions of Imam Ali alayhi salam eventually end up in an army opposite to the army of Imam Ali alayhi salam in the battle of Jamal. How does this happen? Imam says, he's saying, Ma zala Zubair minna Ahlul Bayt. Always Zubair was from the Ahlul Bayt. This is very similar to the tradition of Salman minna Ahlul Bayt. But look what Salman was and continued to be, and look where Zubair was and ended up. Imam is saying, Ma zala Zubair minna Ahlul Bayt. Zubair was always from us Ahlul Bayt. Hatta nasha'alahu ibnuhul mash'um Zubair Abdullah. He's saying all along Zubair was from our Ahlul Bayt. Zubair was close to me. He was one of the close confidants of me, companions of me, one who I trusted, one whom I relied upon till his son Zubair Abdullah was born. After Abdullah was born, he started to grow up. Somehow he began to develop and harbor animosity towards the Ahlul Bayt and Ali. This son eventually took Zubair out of the companionship of Ali ibn Abi Talib. That is why Imam says, Ma zala Zubair minna Ahlul Bayt. Zubair was always from the Ahlul Bayt. Till what time? Hatta nasha'a ibnahul mash'um. Till his evil son was born, Abdullah. This Abdullah ibn Zubair I'm talking about. Remember that incident of Abraha, park it into your minds. We're going to compare now. When Hussein moved from Medina to Makkah, at that time Makkah was under the control of Abdullah ibn Zubair. Because Sham was under the control of Yazid. Sham had total control, Yazid had total control of Sham. Sham was nearer to Iraq, so he also exercises influence on Iraq. Iraq means which cities? At that time Iraq means Basra. At that time Iraq means Kufa. Over here, further away from Sham was Medina and Makkah. By coming towards Medina and Makkah, the authority of Yazid was wavering. Here the control more was Abdullah ibn Zubair. When Hussein moves from Medina to Makkah, and now he's moving towards Karbala, Abdullah ibn Zubair says, I'm not going to support you. Hussein says, you know what I'm going for? He's saying, I cannot support you. I never supported your father, how can I support you? Hussein says, fair enough, not a problem. I only take people who come to me. He goes to Kufa. From there he's moved out towards Kufa. From there he's moved to Karbala. The incident of Karbala finished. When incident of Karbala finishes, Yazid carries on for 3 years. 3 years later he dies. His son comes, Muawiyah ibn Yazid. Muawiyah ibn Yazid was a very good person. He was killed. Again, that's a different history. Then comes Marwan. Marwan and Bani Marwan, the same that I mentioned, Ash-Shajaratul Mal'una, Quran says. The accursed lineage. The lineage that is cursed by Allah. Shajaratul Mal'una. Marwan, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, Hisham ibn Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, Sulaiman ibn Abdul Malik ibn Marwan, Walid ibn Abdul Malik ibn... Ajab this lineages. But now when Abdul Malik ibn Marwan comes, after Marwan goes, Abdul Malik ibn Marwan comes. Abdul Malik ibn Marwan is now exercising his control over everything. Whether it is Sham, he's got control. Iraq, he's got control. The only thing out of his control is still Hijaz. Hijaz is under the control of Abdullah ibn Zubair. So Abdul Malik ibn Marwan says, I want Hijaz, Makkah. A center of trade and gathering of people. I want Makkah. Whom does he select? Hajjaj. Hajjaj is another story. You just keep going out. Let's not come back. Hajjaj is somebody different. You need to study Hajjaj to know who Hajjaj was. Hajjaj ibn Yusuf al-Thaqafi. People that come into this world. Na'udhu billah. But Hajjaj is sent. Hajjaj comes, he says, I'm going to take out Abdullah ibn Zubair. Whatever happens. He brings a 12,000 force army. Remember Abraha, park it into your minds. He brings a 12,000 force. Remember what Abdullah ibn Zubair did? He left the Wali of Khuda. He left the Hujjat of God. 12,000 people come. Abdullah ibn Zubair realizes that he could be cornered. They lay a siege around Makkah. Hajjaj lays a siege around Makkah. You need to know who Hajjaj was, his dimensions, his attitude, his inherent disposition to know how he worked. He laid siege to Makkah. As he laid siege to Makkah, in those times, there were certain occasions and certain places where you were always safe. So for example, those 4 months where you cannot fight. Ashhurul Hurum, you can't fight. Fighting was not allowed. One of the places of sanctity was Kaaba. If somebody goes to the Kaaba, he is protected. The Quran says, Man dakhalahu kana amina. Whoever enters the Kaaba, he is under the protection of God. They honored this. Even the Quraysh would honor it at the time of the Holy Prophet. If there's a fight, somebody goes and takes shelter in the Kaaba, they will not fight. Abdullah ibn Zubair, thinking that when he goes to the Kaaba, he will be protected, he goes to the Kaaba and takes protection, seeks inside. But he did not realize he was dealing with somebody like Hajjaj, who has no barriers. So Hajjaj comes, surrounds Makkah. Abdullah ibn Zubair is in Kaaba. Hajjaj says, no way I'm going to leave him. They bring catapults with huge boulders and they start throwing rocks and they start throwing fire into Masjidul Haram, onto the Kaaba. Reports say the Kaaba was destroyed. Walls fell down. Curtains were burnt. This house of God was burnt. This house of God, walls and portions of it were destroyed. And God does not do anything. Hajjaj manages to come inside Makkah, enters Masjidul Haram, picks up Abdullah ibn Zubair, beheads him. There Abraha comes to destroy the house of God. He sends Ababil. Here Abdullah ibn Zubair brings catapult. Could Ababil not be sent? Allah says that was a different event, this was a different event. Abdullah ibn Zubair left my wali. I will allow my house to be destroyed by somebody so that this person who has forsaken my hujjat gets caught and killed. I will then make arrangements for my house to be restored again. But if my wali is forsaken, I will forsake my house to get the person who has left my wali. This is the difference when I say that imamat is such a position that when false imam comes and we make a mistake and mess up, it's to our own peril. There is no help afterwards. If Allah could get his house destroyed, that same God who could send small birds and kill an army of elephants stays behind and says, let my house be destroyed because this man has left my wali who sought his help. See the imamat? But this is how the false imam would come. But we want to look at the signs. This is one of the signs of the false imam. Second condition, second thing that the imam, remember that long hadith? Saluni qabla an tafqaduni. Imam says one of the signs that you will see, and I'm looking at the watch, I'm really running short of time. The second thing that imam says is a time when people adha'un nasa salah. People will kill the salat. These are the words, La yatruku salah. He didn't say they will abandon the salat. وَأَمَاتَ النَّاسُ الصَّلَاةِ. They will kill salat. There is one thing when you say he doesn't pray or he makes the salat qada. That is not the word. أَمَاتَ النَّاسِ. They will kill salah. Now this includes both those individuals who don't pray. These are signs leading up to the 12th imam. When the imam would come, people would be killing their salat. Present will be prevalent when the imam comes. This includes those who don't pray, as well as who pray but mess up their prayers. Today, Juma, today. Those who are present. Certain actions, you get rewards right now. But even those rewards, by sitting over here, you can burn it down. You say, Tasbihat Arba, you get a tree in paradise. You don't want to go into details, we discussed this at the Juma. But you backbite, that same tree gets burnt down. Sitting in this world, you burn it down. Same thing over here. People will pray. So it consists of those people who will not pray. So at the time, there will be a lot of people. The mu'mineen, not praying salat. We're looking at the time of the 12th imam. But there will be people who will pray. But the prayers that they will do, after that they will do such things that the prayers are lost. They will kill their prayers. This person is at more of a loss than somebody who doesn't pray. You know why? Quran says, هَلْ نُنَبِّئُكُمْ بِالْأَقْصَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. Should I tell you on the day of judgment who's going to be at the greatest loss? الَّذِينَ ظَلَّ سَعْيُهُمْ فِي الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا وَهُمْ يَحْسَبُونَ أَنَّهُمْ يُحْسِنُونَ صُنْعًا. He's saying those people who do good deeds in this world and think they're carrying heavy baskets of thawab and rewards, on the day of judgment when they are made to stand and that hisab will begin, that accounting will begin, and when his book of deeds will be opened, everything thrown into the trash. He's saying the worst loser is one who thinks he's got the rewards to take him to paradise. But on the day of judgment, when his book of deeds will open, it will be shown all your deeds are nullified into the trash. As opposed to somebody who was not praying. He knows, Baba, I don't have anything. But you know you have done something. You feel you know you have done something. But when the time comes, there's nothing. The shock at that time will be immense. It's like somebody who's got a hole in the pocket and he's putting money inside. At the time when he needs to take out money, he puts his hand into the pocket, considering and assuming he's got money, doing a transaction, takes it out, no money. How does it happen? Amatun nas as-salah. People pray, but they mess up. How can they mess up? One, they don't know the sharaat of prayers. Somebody 25 years is praying salat, jama'at, but he doesn't know that you cannot go into the ruku before the imam. You cannot go into the sajda before the imam. You cannot raise your head from the sajda before the imam. The moment you do that, you come out of salat. You come out of jama'at. The moment you come out of jama'at, you still think you're in jama'at. So you don't recite your ahlam. You don't recite your surah. As soon as you don't recite, your namaz becomes batil, that rakat becomes batil. When one rakat becomes batil, your namaz becomes batil. 25 years he is thinking when he's dying. 25 years salatul jamaat on the first line. On the day of judgment, nothing. Amat nas salah. We need to know all this. Somebody is praying with a particular tasbih. 10 years I'm reciting tasbih. Hope this tasbih is taken out of money without khums. Every action that you do, you don't get reward, you're getting sins. This contains money of Imam Zamana. Take out khums. Without khums, you're praying salat on musalla at house. The whole years, day in and day out. You're so complacent. Every night I get up at 5 and recite my salatul layl. Namaz al-shab. Beautiful musalla. From Iraq. Beautiful fragrance, velvet, so nice to stand on. Khums not given, you can't stand on it. Every step you take on it, it is a sin. This will be asked, why were you standing on a mat that had the money of Imam Zamana and the Sadat in it? Amat and Nasu Salah. Things we need to know. We think we are doing good things, but is it really what matters? Are we doing it correctly? We've been told your salat needs to have your makhraj correct. You need to have your makhraj correct, tested. Without the makhraj correct, the qiraat is wrong. If the qiraat is batil, then that rakat is batil. If the rakat is batil, salat is batil. We spend so much time researching on projects, we can't spend some time to get our tilawat right. There is no solution. There would be no excuse on the day of judgment. I was so busy. From 7 in the morning to 12 at night I was busy. I didn't have time. Amatin nas salah. But this keeps going on. This keeps going on. Because then, one of the things that, and we will see it happening. Imam Ali, one of the things closer to the arrival of the 12th Imam that you see, and I've got another 5-7 minutes to finish off, is that nearing to the time of the 12th Imam, when the Akhirul Zaman comes, lot of deaths would take place, sudden deaths. Sudden deaths, natural calamities, young deaths. Normally, it is an expected practice that individuals grow old and they pass away from this world. A normal scenario. But tradition says, come closer to the Akhirul Zaman, you will have sudden deaths, young deaths, and natural disasters. When it comes to natural disasters and natural rains, understand this. It's all governed by our actions. It's all governed by our actions. So even if you want rains and the barakah from the earth and the skies, it is because a person exhibiting taqwa in that particular place. Quran says, لو اتقوا أهل القرى لَفَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ بَرَكَاتٍ مِّنَ السَّمَاءِ وَالْأَرْضِ. If a certain group, a certain community, a certain nation were to exhibit taqwa, we will open the barakat from the skies and the earth. You know, when the 12th Imam comes, and this is not going to be our topic of discussion for this Ashra. This is the time when the 12th Imam comes and solidifies his government. Saying once that government solidifies, the earth will come out and gush out all its treasures. It will, the harvest, the crops, the minerals, the natural elements that would be there in the ground will all gush forth. Crops never before seen, fruits never before seen, quality never before seen. You know why? Because the man with taqwa is ruling over the country, or over or established over the earth. When that happens, automatically Allah will open the doors of barakah from the skies and from the earth. It's not ad hoc. Understand one thing, our understanding of God is very different. Nothing in the sphere of the domain of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is random or ad hoc. Everything is calculated, because that entity is all-knowing and has the power to do what he knows. At that point of time, not only the barakat is governed by our actions, the barakah from the skies and the barakah from the ground. See the 8th Imam, you know the story? Rain's not coming. Everybody watched the serial of Imam Rida. Rain's not coming. Then they asked Imam Rida to pray. He recites the Salatul Istisqa, raises his hands and prays. Why? When a muttaqi person prays, then Allah opens the barakah from the skies and from the earth. Similarly, if a community does sins, it also brings forth natural repercussions and natural responses. So we've got traditions. In regions, إِذَا كَثُرَتِ الزِّنَا كَثُرَتِ الزِّلْزَالِ. In regions where there is lot of fornication, in those regions Allah will send earthquakes. These are part of that sunnat of God. Remember the first lecture we discussed? The laws that Allah sent. إِذَا كَثُرَتِ الزِّنَا كَثُرَتِ الزِّلْزَالِ. In regions where there's a lot of fornication, Allah sends down earthquakes. So the actions of the people evoke natural responses from Mother Nature, the sunnat of God. In the Akhirul Zaman, this will happen. But the difference is that in the previous communities, when people would start committing evil, the whole community would be taken to task. So we've got communities that have been converted into monkeys. You know about the issue of the Bani Israel. Kunu qiradatan khasa'in, turn into monkeys, disgraced and debased, because you tried to flout our orders. Communities were converted into rabbits. Certain traditions state why this happened, because in those communities, ladies never observed the morals of chastity and adherence to the Shariat. The whole community was converted into rabbits. Certain communities were converted into fish without scales, because they were so lazy, they would always try to be lazy and violate the rulings of God. Certain communities converted into monkeys. Certain communities, because of certain sins, annihilated in total. Hazrat Lut alayhi salam, we know it. Certain communities submerged because of the stubbornness and recalcitrance and stubbornness. Who? Hazrat Nuh alayhi salam. But one thing that differentiates the ummah of the Holy Prophet from the ummah of the previous prophets was that in the previous ummah, a wholesale punishment would come. But Allah says, Habib, I love you so much, I can't do that. مَا كَانَ اللَّهُ لَيُعَذِّبَهُمْ وَأَنْتَ فِيهِمْ. Allah cannot send down the adhab on the entire community as long as my Prophet, you're there. And it is our belief, even after the death, the Prophet still continues to live. So one thing that we are safe from is a collective punishment, the kinds that Yahud faced and the kinds that converted into monkeys and into rabbits. This will never take place with us, but individual punishments will. And this is what the individual punishments: large-scale deaths, large-scale diseases, large-scale sudden deaths, young deaths, all leading up to the arrival of the 12th Imam. And the situation, one last sentence, one situation that would come up in such a way, the first Imam is saying this. He is saying situation would turn so bad that we say Amr bil Ma'ruf means you enjoin towards the goodness, wa Nahy anil Munkar, dissuade people from bad things. Ma'ruf means good, Munkar means bad. the final stages before the arrival, during the arrival of the 12th Imam, munkar would become ma'roof. I had said this, and ma'roof will become munkar. Things which were good will become bad, and things that are bad will be considered good. Look at these sentences from the Imam. وَكَانَ الْحِلْمُ الضَّعَفَى. Forbearance, patience will be considered as a sign of weakness. وَالظُّلْمُ فَخْرًا. And oppression will be considered as a matter of pride. You know, Gaddafi killed 4 million people. وَكَانَ الظُّلْمُ فَخْرًا. It will be considered good. كَانَ زَعِيمُ الْقَوْمِ أَرْذُلُهُمْ. Leaders of countries and communities will be the lowest, the base, the most lowly of the peoples. Because the criteria is now not taqwa and quality. The criteria is who is قَدْ أَفْلَحَ الْيَوْمَ مَنِ اسْتَعْلَى. Who has more power, who has more money. So it goes on. وَبَاعُ الدُّنْيَا بَاعُ الْآخِرَةِ بِالدُّنْيَا. People will sell their akhirat for the sake of dunya. They will not care a damn about what happens in their akhirat. It's all the dunya. Whether it is halal or haram or interest or lies or killing or slandering or backbiting. It is, I want power, money in this world. They're willing to sell their akhirat for the sake of benefit of this dunya. And then he finally says, وَاللَّبَسُوا جُلُودَ الضَّعْنِ عَلَىٰ قُلُوبِ الذِّعَابِ. People would be so hypocritical that sheep clothing would be the facade, whereas the interior would be like wolves. And their interior will be so bad that they would be more foul smelling than even a dead body. That means the ruh of humanity from humans would have died. The ruh of brotherhood amongst the humanity, amongst the people would have died. Things would be so bad that people in the hearts would be wolves, making a facade of taqwa, of piety, of righteousness, at the minutest of opportunity, trying to slander, trying to put down their brothers in faith. And this is all that leads up to the arrival of the 12th Imam. But in leading up to the arrival of the 12th Imam, Imam does not just work on his own. He needs companions. We will not be talking in detail about the companions. This was done 2 ashras earlier, 2 years ago, in which the whole series was only on the companions of the 12th Imam. The criteria, the characteristic, the traits, the dangers, what we should not do to not be the companion of the 12th Imam, what we should do so as to enable us to become the companions of the 12th Imam. It's going to be a very difficult task. Every Tom, Dick and Harry cannot pass that test that the 12th Imam has placed for people to enter into his army, because this is not an ordinary army. This is not an army that is going around for domination. This is an army bringing reformation and revolution to change this world filled with oppression and injustice, to convert it into a world filled with peace and equality. Every Tom, Dick and Harry cannot enter. But there are certain criteria. And the criteria that needs to be looked, go back to Karbala. Go back to Karbala. 2 Imams, and I've told this before, the similarity between the 3rd Imam and the 12th Imam. The similarity between the 3rd Imam. One, I said to you, inspiration of the 12th Imam from the 3rd Imam. There's so many intertwined relationship between the 3rd Imam and the 12th Imam. One of them is this. If you want to look at the companions of all the Imams, the 2 Imams whose companions resemble most each other are the companions of the 3rd Imam and the companions of the 12th Imam. Very similar. Very similar in trait, very similar in characteristic, very similar in behavior. And the measure that Hussein used to identify his true companions would be the one that the 12th Imam would use, plus a few more. So everybody cannot come. It is only who really with sincerity says, فَيَا لَيْتَنِي كُنْتُ مَعَكُمْ. Oh, I wish I was there, with his entire wujud, then has a chance to enter into the fold of the 12th Imam. And what was the criteria used by Hussein? Who were those people that Hussein used? When Hussein moves from Makkah to Karbala, up to the time he's entering Karbala, the 2nd of Muharram, up to the time he's entering. There are certain people he would say, go away. Don't come with me. You will be killed. They want me. They want my hand or they want my head. My hand I'm not going to give. They can take my head. My bay'at I'm not going to give. They can take my life. But they have got nothing to do with you. Go away. Leave. Go to your families before entering Karbala. But there were individuals whom, while Hussein was telling the others, go away, there were individuals whom Hussein would invite to come. People who were not in Karbala. People in another city. Kufa. Come to me, my friend, Habib ibn Mudahir. Where was Habib at that time, you know? He was sitting in his house. Hussein enters the second of Karbala. As the days pass, you heard. Hur would keep calling out to Ibn Ziyad. Hur would keep telling Yazid, Hussein is under my control. I need more forces. I need more forces. In answer to his call for more forces, Yazid would keep sending, Ibn Ziyad would keep sending people. As Hussein's tent were pitched up, every so often, when a force would come, there would be a flutter of happiness in the force amongst the forces of the Yazidi army. And Zainab would keep hearing, suddenly hoofs of horses and armies coming, and suddenly the Yazidi force is happy. Hussein, Zainab would tell Fizza, go out and see who's come. Fizza would come and say, oh Shahzadi, today Khuli has come. Who is called Khuli? After some time another force would come. Yes, Zainab would tell Fizza, find out who's come. Oh Shahzadi, Hurmala has come. Khuli has come. Shimr has come. Umar Saad has come. When these forces would keep coming, and every time the names of the enemies of Hussein and Zainab would be heard, Hussein's sister gets a little despondent. She says to Fizza, go and call my brother Hussein. Hussein comes, says, sister, what is the matter? Zainab says, oh brother Hussein, what is it that I'm seeing? Every so often, every day, a group is coming, but all the army that is coming, either Shimr or Khuli, Ibn Umar Saad or XYZ, they all enemies that are dying for our blood. Is there nobody who can help us? Hussein looks and tells Zainab, who is this going to help us? At that time Zainab tells, and this is what ulama say, that the first person who thought about Habib ibn Muzahir was not Hussein, was Zainab, sister of Hussein. He's saying, brother Hussein, but don't you know you've got a friend in Kufa, Habib ibn Muzahir. I am sure if you write to him, he is one person who will never turn you down. Hussein writes a letter, min Hussein ila rajulin faqih Habib ibn Muzahir. Habib ibn Muzahir, I want you to come to Kufa, to Karbala. The letter goes, we're moving fast forward, I'm looking at the time. The letter goes, traditions report Yazid, Habib ibn Mudahir is sitting with his wife having his meals. There's a knock on the door. Says, man, Ana Bariyadul Hussein, I'm the messenger of Hussein. As soon as Habib hears Hussein, he rushes. Oh, my messenger of Hussein, what have you brought? A letter. Takes the letter, opens. What is it? Min Hussein ila Habib ibn Mudahir. Habib, I want you to come to Karbala. Habib sees that he cannot believe. Is my master in Karbala? Saying, yes, he's called you. Saying, hi, let's go. Now he's wondering, how do I tell my wife? So he folds the letter. But the wife had already heard somebody knocking. He's saying, who was it? He's saying, it was a messenger. Messenger from whom? Messenger from Hussein. Messenger from Hussein, where is Hussein? Saying in Karbala. Hussein is in Karbala. What did that letter say? He's saying Hussein wants me to join him. Hussein wants you to join him. Habib, what are you thinking? What have you decided? Now Habib had made up his mind, but he just wanted to see the wife's reaction. He's saying, I'm thinking and deciding what to do. Reports say Habib's wife flies into a rage. He's saying, Habib, the son of Fatima calls you for help, and you have the audacity to say, I am thinking, give me your sword. This wife of yours will go to help Hussein. Ajab this is. Habib says, no, I was just trying to test you. I was worried once I go, because once I go there is no coming back. You know the situation of Kufa. You know what happens to Muslim ibn Aqil. If I go there, I'm not coming back. I'm worried about you, my wife. Reports say, tradition say, the wife says, don't worry about me, Habib. I will eat dirt and sand and live my life. You cannot forsake the son of Fatima. Go, Habib, go. Now the whole incident, Habib sends his horse and the slave first. Then in the darkness of the night he goes. It's early morning when he enters into the Karbala. As the forces, as the companions of Hussein see Habib, there is a flutter of happiness. There is takbeers all around. First time happiness in the Husseini Fauj. And Zainab is hearing. She's hearing the forces saying, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. She calls Fizza. So Fizza, find out, why is my army happy? Fizza goes out, comes back, says, Mubarak Shehzadi, oh Princess, Mubarak is to you. Saying, Mubarak is for what? The friend of your brother Habib has come. Zainab stands up, Habib has come. Fizza, go, call Habib, I want to talk to him. Fizza goes, says to Aka Hussein, Shahzadi wants to talk to Habib ibn Muzahir. Hussein brings Habib ibn Muzahir, comes near the tent. The curtain is there. Inside it is Zainab, outside it is Habib. Habib sends salam upon Zainab. At that time, tradition says, I've heard from ulama, say Habib tells Zainab, Shahzadi, how can I help you now that I'm here? Zainab says, otherwise I don't have any problem. The only thing that I'm worried about is my hijab. The only thing I'm worried about is my chadar. At that time Habib gives a promise. As long as this servant of yours is alive, Shahzadi, your hijab is safe. This is the reason. When on the day of Ashura, after Hussein is killed, Abbas is killed, Qasim is killed, and the tents are burned, and the hijab of Zainab is taken away. Zainab doesn't turn to Hussein. Zainab doesn't turn to Abbas. She turns to the Maqtal, says, oh brother Habib, you had promised me my hijab would be safe. Look at what people of your community have done to guests that have come to your region. وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيَّ مُنْقَلَبٍ يَنْقَلِبُونَ